Welcome to Conversations with Women Trailblazers. Our episode guest is Lauren Battistini, a fantastic woman that I've known for at least 10 years now. She is a lady who has many talents and has this interesting new business adventure that I want you all to know about. So let us all give a welcome to Lauren Battistini. Lauren, it's awesome to have you here today.
Thank you, Carmen, for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm honored that you chose me as a guest for your very special program.
Absolutely, Lauren. I've known you for at least 10 years now. We met at a women's business owners conference, networking event back then, and we hit it off. Back then, you had another business venture, but before we get there, let's talk about Lauren. How were you as a little girl? Where were you? Where did you grow up? Tell us about you.
I was born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. And although I've been in Texas now for 22, almost 23 years, and I love Texas, the first thing I tell people about myself is I'm New Orleanian. And the second thing I tell people about myself is my heritage. And I think the reason I do this is because in New Orleans, as is the case in so many other parts of the world, we're a very culturally, ethnically blended people. So on my mom's side of the family, there's Italian and Scottish heritage. And on my dad's side of the family, predominantly Spaniard and French heritage. And so I like to call myself a little bit of a Southern Mediterranean Latina gringa, something along those lines. So I grew up in New Orleans, and I went to Catholic school, as most people do in New Orleans. A lot of people do anyway. From about first grade all the way up to 10th grade, I had an upbringing where I was raised by two sets of parents because my parents divorced when I was very young. And all four of my parents, mom, dad, stepmom, stepdad, they instilled in me this this belief that you should always try your very hardest at whatever you're doing. And they all demonstrated some level of confidence and belief in me that I could do whatever I set my mind to. So all four of my parents really held me to what I think is a very high standard. At the time, maybe I thought it was too high of a standard, but my parents always encouraged me to pursue things like my music. I play flute and piccolo. I was in band. I used to play some different sports. I've been in swimming. I explored art just a little bit, although back then I didn't know I was going to be an artist. So the point I'm really getting to here is that I had a childhood where I was encouraged to work very hard and explore possibilities and capitalize in a good way on the opportunities presented to me. I went to college at a private Christian college, a liberal arts college in Jackson, Mississippi called Belhaven. And I have an accounting degree from there. I don't do anything with accounting. Don't like it. It's not my thing. But there were scholarships available for me to major in some area of business. And so I chose accounting because I liked the intro to accounting and I thought, well, I can survive this. So that's just a little bit about my background.
Well, that's interesting because you're mentioning that you were encouraged to do what you liked. And I see at a very early age from what you've told me that there's art, whether it's music, whether it's color in your life. So this started as a very early age, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
It did, but also I forgot to mention that my very earliest memories of creative play were sitting with boxes of crayons, Crayola crayons. And I had these coloring books that my mom and grandmother would buy me, and I would just color them. And I would be more fascinated with the colors, the names of the colors, the color combinations, and I would be blending them. And then I would go door to door. My mom and I at the time lived in this little fourplex apartment in New Orleans, in Metairie, a part of New Orleans. And I would go knocking door to door to sell my little colored coloring pages to my neighbors. So I think that my obsession and fascination with color has always been there. And my entrepreneurial spirit was there before I understood what that was.
And at what point do you go from being in band, loving color, doing sports, and you decide to go into accounting? How did that happen? That's a total surprise to me.
It is a surprise. So, like I said, my parents did encourage me to pursue whatever I wanted to pursue. I'd never in my life thought that art was a practical profession. I didn't pursue art per se. I was so fascinated with color, though, and a lot of things creative, but I didn't I didn't classify myself as an artist. Had I done so, had I had the forethought to do that, my parents would have said, yeah, go to art school, do what you need to do. I just didn't think of myself as an artist at all. And the accounting deal, I needed to get out of college in 4 years. That was my mission. And the accounting degree was an avenue that I received scholarships for that. And I thought, let me just try this. I worked in an accounting firm, Carmen, out of college for 4 months. And I hated the experience. I love the people I worked with, but I realized I'm not an accountant. This is not my profession. I can't do this. It's not for me. So I realized that very early on. And I think in some way, while I was studying accounting, I didn't think that accounting was the long-term fit for me. However, being the creative entrepreneur that I am, it's sometimes hard to be taken seriously as a creative. But as soon as I hit the people up with, hey, I have an accounting degree, everyone all of a sudden thinks I'm smarter than I am, and they're impressed by that. So it has served its purposes, and also giving me some sense of business knowledge and understanding and how to work with numbers. So the accounting degree has had a place in my life, but I have an accountant, I have a CPA, I have someone who handles my personal taxes and somebody who handles my business taxes. I'm not doing it.
And I think that it's important that you mention it, because you've said several things here. The first one is, as an artist, people may not take you seriously. It's not a career that people usually think of. They don't think that someone, and to this day, even though we're seeing a trend towards the other side, but we still see people who want to pursue art and they're discouraged because supposedly they'll starve as an artist. You'll never make it. I'm sure you heard some of those if you would have ever trended back then into that direction. And at the same time, telling people that you have a background in accounting, now they change their mind and say, oh, well, now we need to take her seriously because she's not just an artist. Should I say it that way?
You can say it that way. Also, I think that even as I've made this transition, which you and I've had personal discussions, and I've made this transition to full-time artist and full-time travel kind of podcaster. So this is a very recent development for me. Right. And I have to be careful about who I even tell that I'm now a full-time artist, because people are really looking at me like I am insane. And they will look at me as though, how are you going to make money at that? You don't have a safety net. You don't have a corporate 9-to-5 job. Should you go get a 9-to-5 job while you're trying to pursue art? And I'm saying to people, no, I'm doing this. So even though people know I have an accounting degree, I think people still cannot wrap their heads around this idea that in today's day and age, with all of the technology that we have, with the digital reach that we can achieve, that being a very lucrative artist is very, very, very feasible, very plausible.
Absolutely. And now that you mention it, I want to ask you if you can take us with you in your journey throughout time. When I met you, you were a color analyst for women. And I have seen you go to do commercial color analysis or color consulting commercially. I'm not going to go deep into it because I'm going to mess it up and I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm going to let you go there. And now you have this other fantastic business, and we've seen you on social media. I have seen you on social media with your multiple languages. So this is a very interesting journey. You have many talents and you're not afraid to embrace them, and hopefully not many mistakes, but learn from your mistakes. Take us on that journey. How has it been for you from way back when to this day? What has happened with Lauren Battistini?
So let's talk about the journey from a career perspective for a moment. And I'll summarize it like this. You're correct. When we first met, it was over 10 years ago, I think, I was doing personal color analysis, which was where I would tell women what colors look best on them in terms of wardrobing, cosmetics, accessories, hair color. And it was such a niche, specialized business and not necessarily a need for people. I thought it was a need for people, but others didn't perceive it as such. And so I realized that I would need to kind of do a pivot. And I did a pivot actually before that pivot. So back around 2013, I decided to go to fashion design school in the middle of my life with 3 kids in 3 different schools. And he's now my ex-husband, but we divorced amicably. But at the time, he was very supportive of my journey through fashion design school. I really thought that I was going to apply my color knowledge and my knowledge of wardrobing to launch women's apparel as a profession, to be a fashion designer. Well, Carmen, I went through the program in 2.5 years, and you mentioned earlier in the question about failures, but not failures, right? Failures that are learning experiences. So the fashion design school, that pivot that I did, um, first of all, it taught me that I love art. The only class in the whole program I loved was fashion sketching. That's when I began really doing art. But when I graduated from the program, I made attempts to launch this women's apparel line, and I saw how expensive it would be, how difficult it was to source my fabrics, and how difficult fitting and pattern grading was going to be. And I had to ask myself a hard question. Do I love this enough to go into debt over it and hope that I can be the 1% of fashion designers who's successful commercially? And I had to cut my losses. So around this time, I decided, okay, I'll continue doing the personal color analysis, but this is not cutting it for me financially. I need something better. I went through a divorce in 2018 and I needed a way to provide for myself. And that is when I made the decision to apply my color knowledge to the architectural world of residential and commercial specification. This is where I go into people's homes or remodeling projects or new custom builds, work with home builders, commercial real estate professionals. And I was the person to go in and specify all kinds of colors and materials and finishes. It could be concrete color, it could be roofing, it could be wallpaper, you name it. Anywhere where a color decision had to be made, there I was. And this is what I have done up until a few months ago. Around a year ago, I started feeling this need to return to art. I discovered in a fashion design school around the pandemic, I really wanted to become an artist, but just didn't have the nerve to do so. And it didn't, again, I keep going back to it didn't seem practical. It didn't seem pragmatic. The accountant in me was looking at running numbers and thinking, I don't know if this is such a great idea. No one even knows who I am to buy my art. I didn't go to art school. So I struggled with some self doubt. But here we are in the end of 2023. And I have just taken on this new adventure, which I'll tell you quite simply is a combination of my loves of art, language learning, travel, people, culture, entrepreneurship, interesting stories. And so here I am launching a full-time art career and also set to launch my own podcast, which is called Coloring My Way Across the Globe, which is where I chronicle the most colorful people, places, and experiences I've encountered kind of off the beaten path, places near and far. And so that's where I am present day. So it's taken a long time to get here. It's where I am right now is both exciting and also frightening because I'm literally starting from scratch all over again at age 51. Except this time, I know exactly what I want to do, and all of my great passions are converging. And now it makes sense. Whereas in years past, it didn't make sense. Even my social media was all over the place, and my followers didn't even know what I was really marketing. Because one week I'd be talking about personal color. The next week I'm talking about architectural color. The next week I'm talking about a trip I'm taking to Portugal. So I think my audience was confused about what I was really doing. And now I've been able to clarify for myself mainly what I want to do and then communicate and convey that to my audience. I hope that explains
very
that.
clear, very rich what you've shared right now. And you have me thinking. I'm listening to you and I'm thinking at the same time. And I guess it's a bit unfair because I've been following you through all this time, and I've been seeing what you've done. And yes, I agree that it may make you think my followers don't know what I'm doing. Do they really need to know at the moment what you're doing if you're going through a transition?
Yeah,
if we don't know, do they really need to know exactly what's happening?
not necessarily, but one of the hallmarks of me as an entrepreneur is I'm kind of known for my transparency. I don't divulge info about my personal life as much, but I'm very open to sharing with people when I'm engaged in a new entrepreneurial pursuit of some sort. But that's a very good question you ask. People really don't necessarily have to know all of my moves and the motive behind them. You're right. You're actually right about that. Maybe I can cut myself a little bit of slack on that one.
Yeah, because if we're trying to figure it out ourselves, we're presenting what's going on in the moment. And when you connect the dots, at least I'm seeing now how it all came full circle. And one thing you mentioned also, that you had to pivot. You were going through the process, you were trying this aspect, this other thing, and then you realized you needed to change directions. And that's totally right. That's totally perfect. And I want to tell people, those who are watching us, especially those women who are trying to do something different, something that makes them happy, feels their soul. It's okay if you don't know. It's okay if you're figuring it out. Many times, and I don't know about your experience, Lauren, but my experience has been personal and with other people. We try to do something. We wake up at night with that idea. We have that passion, it's pulling us. And then this one thought comes to us that stops everything. How am I going to do it? What if this happens? What if I run out of money? How am I going to make money? How am I going to fund or find people that help me fund it? All these other things, all these other questions that come along, there's always this one question that stops you from doing great things. When in reality, just take the step, do it, take the challenge, go for it, and figure it out along the way. Honestly, nobody here is doing heart surgery. Let me tell you, we're not doing heart surgery. We're doing business. Okay, that's a different story. So,
and you would know.
I would know, right?
Dr. Lendrow.
I would know. It's okay. You can test different things. I would tell, and you know, because I've followed you and I've encouraged you, and I've told you, I love what you're doing. Find someone who supports you. Find someone who doesn't say, oh my God, all she wants is the views. Because we have that a lot on social media. Don't you realize that there's a lot of people saying she's doing it for views, but she doesn't know what she's doing? Exactly. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing something. And I'm going for my goal, and I'm going to get there somehow. And I love that you've been doing it. I've loved your sailing. I've loved your languages, which we haven't spoken about. You have all this knowledge. You're multilingual. And I'll let you talk about your knowledge in languages, your native tongue and all that. But it's beautiful how you've immersed yourself in language. And I love it because, one, I'm multilingual. And I honestly believe that when you have deep knowledge of a language, you can understand the people in that culture, in that country, in that region. You can say whether someone's Mediterranean or whether someone is Italian or Greek, because you understand the expressions, the body movement, how they eat, how they share something with friends. You know, it's very rich. So tell us a little bit about your languages and about your experiences there as well.
Okay, so language learning. English obviously is my native tongue. And though I have this Spaniard heritage, we did not learn Spanish growing up. My dad's father, birth father, was Spaniard Cuban, and he divorced from my dad's mom when my dad was just a baby, basically. And so we didn't really know him. And so I went and learned Spanish in Costa Rica in Central America back in 1994, my last semester of college. I fully immersed myself. I lived with a Costa Rican family. I had a Costa Rican boyfriend. Yes, honey. Taught me how to salsa dance, do merengue, and he just was wonderful. So as I was learning language, he was very disciplined in making sure that I only spoke Spanish, and he didn't speak very much, too much English either. But so that was a really good arrangement for me to learn. It was a great motivation for me to learn Spanish. So I've also begun learning Greek as my third language in the last few years. I've taken about 3 different trips to Greece already. And I love languages, much for the reason that you cited, which is when you learn a language, you really begin to understand people and culture. So my reason for learning languages is truly because I love people, and I'm fascinated by their customs and their culture and the way that they do things. And you know this as a native Spanish speaker, and you're fully bilingual. English and Spanish, you navigate between, you toggle between the 2 languages effortlessly. But you and I both know that in Spanish, there are certain words and certain phrases that are really only meant to be said in Spanish to be fully understood. For example, tú me caes muy bien. And tú me caes bien is literally saying in English, you fall well with me. That doesn't even mean anything. But in Spanish, what it really means is that, wow, I really like you. You're cool to me. And I have something for you. And it's not romantic. It's just me caes bien, like we would get along well. So when you learn a language, you also learn local expressions, and you understand who people are to the core. I have always loved languages. I took French class in grammar school, and it's one of the only classes that I wasn't busy chit-chatting in. I used to get in trouble in school with every teacher in every class because I was just talking and making trouble. Not in my language classes. I really loved them. And I plan on becoming fully fluent in Greek. It's a hard language.
Wow,
I'm going to do it.
that's interesting. You're getting there, right? You're doing
I'm
it.
working on it.
Awesome. Any other, do you speak Italian?
I speak a few words of
Few words
Italian.
of Italian. So you
Same
speak
thing with Portuguese.
Portuguese. You speak English. That's your native tongue. You speak Spanish. She speaks Spanish very well. I can tell that she speaks Spanish very well. And I didn't know where she was from because the first time we met, we were speaking Spanish. Right? You and I were speaking Spanish, and I'm thinking, is she Puerto Rican?
Because you and I know I was married to a Puerto Rican.
And I'm Puerto Rican, and now you're Puerto Rican. I don't know.
And the Puerto Ricans have a certain dialect and certain words that are used. And I was married for 21 years to a great Puerto Rican guy. And so I learned all the lingo, and I know how to cook Puerto Rican food, and I've been fully indoctrinated. Okay.
That's why. You had me fooled. But now you have a new business, and it's a very interesting business. And I would like you to go a little bit into detail. What is it that you're doing? Who are you helping with this business? What does it mean to you? Because I think it's a very rich opportunity for others and for yourself. But I'm going to let you talk about it. Tell us the name and tell us everything that you can about this new business that you have.
Okay, so I have basically two arms of the same business. There is the full-time artist side of what I do, which is where I utilize art to capture my most colorful moments of travel and language learning and landscapes. A lot of the subjects that I'm going to be painting, or that I do paint and color, are florals, colors that are native to certain places I've been, landscapes, a little bit of portraiture, which is very stylized, but it's all very colorful. So this is where I apply both my art knowledge and my color skill. Okay, so there's the art side of my business. And for the moment, I'm doing originals and I'm selling prints as well, typically to homeowners, more on the residential side of things, just people who like to collect art. But there will come a time in the very near future where I will begin seeking collaborations and partnerships with brands I believe in, where they might want to partner with me. And I create art for a marketing campaign, for example. It could be with a luggage company. It could be with some company that owns products that are really for the travel industry. It could be with a language learning association. I don't even know yet. I'm not sure. So it could be even with a manufacturer of black ink. I do a lot of my artwork in just black ink. I don't use pencils. I just, whatever comes out on the page is, honey, that's what we're working with. So there's the art side of my business. The second aspect of my business is where all of my passions are rolled into one. It is podcasting and content creation. So it's through this new podcast that I'm launching in the new year, and it's called Coloring My Way Across the Globe. And this is where it will be a combination of episodes. Some of them will just be monologues where I'm talking about my travel experiences, but I will be having guests, people I have met or am meeting from all over the world. It could be here in Houston, or I've already interviewed some people in Greece for my podcast. And I say this, these are the most colorful people, places, and experiences I encounter in my travels, both near and far. And these are kind of experiences that are a little bit off the beaten path, things you won't read about in a travel guide. And this is where I utilize my language skills, because as I get to know people in other countries, like in Greece, they appreciate so much that I'm learning their language that it kind of endears me to them a little bit, and they open up, and I ask them questions about spots, restaurants, maybe beaches that are a little bit hidden that tourists don't know about. And those are the places I find out about because I take the time to make friends with the locals. And so through my podcast, I'm bringing some of those guests into the conversation, and I'm having guests on the podcast, everyone from color professionals to other artists. I have a Dutch artist who's a good friend of mine. I met her on Instagram 10 years ago, and she's one of the guests on my podcast episode. And I'm also going to have a wine sommelier from Crete, who I met in Greece, by the way. And so also travel professionals. There is a gentleman who helped my son and me when we were going to Japan in May. This man is a content creator who organizes trips for people going to Japan. And I had no idea. I'm so unfamiliar with that culture, and I had no idea where to begin. And my son and I were taking a 2-week trip, so I hired him to help me. So he is going to be one of my podcast guests. But the aim and the mission of Coloring My Way Across the Globe, Carmen, is really for me to inspire people when they see what I'm doing, to inspire them to set off on their own adventures, to educate them on how to go about doing that, and then to encourage them to do it. I think in life, we don't have a lot of people typically who encourage us to dream. And this could be dreaming about a new career pursuit. It could be about some creative endeavor. It could be you've always wanted to travel to Egypt, for example. I don't think, at least here in the US, as adults, I don't think that we are encouraged once we become adults to dream and to have creative, culturally immersive experiences necessarily. So I hope that through coloring my way across the globe and people listening to the podcast, and it will be audio at first now, it won't be video, it'll be just audio at first. I hope that this accomplishes that mission of inspiring, encouraging, and educating people on how to have their own colorful experiences. It could be just right here in Houston. You just try a bunch of new ethnic food, or you go and enroll in that pottery class you always wanted to enroll in, or you start learning another language.
Do you plan on taking people with you at some point?
You and I talked about this. Okay, here's my big dream. This is my big dream. I'm going to be honest with you about something. I don't want to take people on a trip and feel like I have to babysit everybody. I'm just going to be honest with you. Whenever I travel and I see 50 Canadians or US Americans in a whole big group, I don't think you can have as immersive of an experience as okay. So, but what I do envision, I really envision, and I think I will pull this off, figuring out a way to teach color, how to mix and match color and how to use it for decor and artistic purposes, doing like 3 or 4 day workshops in Greece, for example, in the off season, like in October, when it's still hot outside and you can still swim in the water. I can see myself leading a color related creative workshop where everybody flies in and we do something like that together. I wouldn't be a tour guide though. I have no patience for it. And I just wouldn't be able to do that. But leading a color workshop in a cool place like Greece, I think that would be great.
And this is me now being a coach.
Yes, it is.
Would you think of doing it for people to travel? Let's say, for example, Greece. People traveling into Greece, or will you do it for the locals as well, promote it with the local people, because you're going to be using the businesses resources. If you have dinner or lunch and wine at the beach, there's going to be locals, but there's also going to be people coming in. What do you think?
Oh my goodness. Well, absolutely. So I've made a lot of great friendship with Greeks, and this has been through people who have been my Airbnb hosts to people I just meet on the street. I just talk to everybody whenever I'm traveling. And so I do have a network of friends, both business and professionally, in Greece. And I absolutely would open up the doors to that. And I probably will start forging some connections with local art galleries, or I already have some connections with a young lady who does writing for, she's a reporter and she's a journalist for a tourism-based publication. And also she's going to be on my podcast, but she's pretty well connected. And I think she's someone I could talk to about doing something like that. So that's for the future. My primary goal right now is to grow my art business, because that's where I need to begin making income. The podcast is going to be a slower climb, I think, to having the listeners, the audience build, because this, once you build your podcast and you've got a certain number of viewers or listeners, then it enables you to garner sponsorships and things like that, to where your podcast, you can start monetizing it to a degree. Now, I will say this, my guests on my podcast will never pay to be on my podcast. Right. That's not how the arrangement will be. It will be, I have outside sponsors come in, and it will be something like that. But my guests, these are people who I just want to have really cool cultural conversations with, and they're not going to pay to be on my podcast. In fact, I'll utilize my platform to help them promote their businesses.
That's actually amazing.
Thank you.
One last question I have for you. Could you share any challenges in this new venture of yours? Any lessons that you've had to learn throughout the way?
Yes, I'm dealing with a lesson right now that I think all of your listeners, your viewers need to know about as an entrepreneur. And I'm going to be very blunt and frank about this. The accountant in me is kind of emerging here, right? And I'm looking at how many pieces of art do I need to sell to cover my bills every month, right? Being a relatively unknown artist, And I have determined that if I sell about 4 pieces a week of my original art, then I can cover my expenses. Well, guess what? Nobody right now really knows about me. So this gives me a choice. What do I do this month, next month, and the third month? Do I hunker down and have such a strong presence on social media and post multiple times a day on social media, begin calling potential businesses who I might want to partner with, really being out there and launching this social media campaign where I'm pretty much either creating art or on social media talking about art? Do I go all in for the next 3 months and just do nothing but this and hope and pray that the money will come in, that art sales will emerge through this? Or do I take a chunk of that time and go get a side hustle? And I'm serious, Uber, I'm highly considering Uber, right? And this is a very blunt, this is a very frank, vulnerable conversation, but I'm kind of transparent about things. So I'm literally at that crossroads right now where I do not have a steady flow coming in of income and resources. And so it all then becomes, where do I pour my energy? And how crazy am I? And by crazy, I don't mean crazy. How passionate am I, and how much self-belief do I have, and how hard am I willing to work the next 1 to 3 months? And I'm using this as a immediate time range, but I'll continue to have to work hard. But these first 3 months for me are very crucial to produce as much art as I possibly can, while also figuring out how to make an income. And that income's either going to come from people buy my art, but they don't know me yet, or I pull in from Uber or some other type of resources, income. So this is the reality when in the middle of your life, you decide to either leave corporate America, which I haven't even been in corporate America since I was in my early 20s, or you just have choices like this to make. This is the reality of entrepreneurship. You're white knuckling it. I do believe in taking calculated risks, and that's exactly what I'm doing now. However, this is the most risky calculated risk I've ever made in my life, ever. But if you also think about it, 4 pieces of art a week, 16 a month. If I hustle this whole month, the end of this month and all of January, and I'm on Pinterest, pinning all of my art daily, putting all the right hashtags. If I'm on LinkedIn, if I'm on TikTok, which I am, I'm on all these platforms. If I'm on Instagram, and if I'm sending out blog posts, and if I'm sending out newsletters to the subscribers I do have for my architectural color consulting site, who don't know that I've switched to art yet, those are hundreds of people who are waiting to find out what I'm doing. So I have all of these tools at my disposal. The question then becomes, what's the best utilization of my time right now? So I'm in hustle mode is what I'm in. Hustle mode.
Yeah. And I think that's a good way of putting it, hustle mode.
It's hustle mode.
It is true. Being a business owner is no easy feat, and I've encountered multiple people who think that, especially going back to medicine, thinking about medicine, if you're in academics, some of them think that because you're a private physician, what we call private, you're not employed by any academic institution, that you have it easy, you have it made. Well, if we don't show up, we don't make money. It's just being a business owner. Even if you had a bakery, it's the same thing. If you don't open doors today, you don't sell anything. So you don't meet your whatever numbers you need to meet per day or per amount of time. So yeah, it's very true. It's a challenge, it's a lesson, but it's also, I see it as a way of even being more creative, because you have art, it has to be seen in order to be sold.
That's right.
And people have to know you. So visibility is extremely important for you. So, and I am a witness. You are very active on LinkedIn. You're very active on Instagram. Instagram basically is the social media for art. You're active on Pinterest, and with your podcast as well. That also gives you even more reach, and now internationally. Mm-hmm. So you're doing a lot of steps that are the right steps, and the waiting game is not easy. It's not for weak people. It's not for the faint of heart.
No, and this is an entrepreneur yourself, that we entrepreneurs enjoy freedom of time. We enjoy this freedom, but this freedom comes at a very high cost, a very high price, because it means we run the risk every day of operating business. We run the risk of losing everything. We do. And we run the risk of not making sales that day, not being able to make payroll or something. And I don't have any employees, so I don't have to worry about that, but do have to worry about myself. But I'm going to tell you something that happened this past week to kind of reinforce the point about my being in hustle mode and about getting my art out there. Because I chose this past week not to go and do Uber, not to go and do anything else that I thought could bring in money non-art related. I chose this past week to hunker down and do as much art as I possibly could do. And I produced 2 new art series. And I did not like the first one at all. I thought that my florals looked too cute and tidy. And that really annoyed me. And I was able to, I post everything on social media. I don't care because someone else may really like it a lot. And people also need to see the journey. This is all a long-winded way of saying that because I dedicated time this whole past week to creating as much art as I possibly could create, I'm watching my florals that I just created even yesterday and the day before. They look so much better, and they're starting to get crazy and big, and they're flying off the page, and they're looking textured and kind of messy, and they're looking wild. Like, I want wild botanicals on the canvas. I want my botanicals to be like me, unrestrained, uncontained, wanting to travel, can't be placed in any one box or category. I want my art to represent who I am personally. And so that takes a lot of practice. So I'm leaning in the direction of seeing if I can hang in this next month, just produce as much art as I possibly can within a logical order, right? And upload art every day to my shop. That's what I've been doing. Where I haven't been active, though, is on Pinterest. I have an account there, but I haven't been marketing my art on Pinterest. So that's what I'm going to begin doing actually today. So, this is a podcast where we're not really needing to get into all the nitty gritty of my business. This is your podcast. But you did ask me about what's going on in my career, and this is where I am, and I'm in a crossroads. But I've never been more at peace in my life about what I'm supposed to be doing. I know I'm supposed to be creating art. I finally can rest in that one thing.
I think that's very important. I think that even though you're going through certain challenges, you're at peace. This is not and I don't like to say it that way, but it's exactly how it feels. The soul-sucking job that demoralizes you every day. You come home, you dread going to work. You can't see the end of the day for you to come back home, and then you come home and you have no energy. You dread the next day. You are living an experience, and you're basically going through growing pains. These are very necessary.
That's true. And I do have to say this. One of the reasons why I decided to go into art full time is because I've been commissioned previously to sell some art pieces, to create some art, and I've already sold prints and things like that. It's not like I've not sold anything. That's the other thing. You have to have proof of concept too, I think, before you really launch into full-time business. I already know how to draw. People have bought my art. But why I've gotten into this is because when I see how happy someone is when they purchase my art, it fills my soul. It's like my art, they see value in it, and it lifts their mood, or they want to gift it to a family member. And that is just magical to me. I didn't know that I had the capability of doing that for somebody, and art enables me to do that for people. So,
and that's why we do this. That's why we follow our passions. We want to see people happy. We want to make a difference. I want to close right now the episode, not before sharing your contact information. If anybody wants to contact you, what would be the best way?
The best way is to email me. You can email me at Lauren, LAUREN, at lfbcolor.com. That's L like Lauren, F like Frank, B like boy, color the American way, COLOR.com. Or you can visit my website, lfbcolor.com, or you can really find me on Instagram, lfbcolor. That's where I'm posting my works in progress and my final work as well. And my podcast, which is launching January 1st.
Yes, let's not forget about that. And I'll post all the links here in the show notes. So if anybody wants to contact Lauren, please go and read the show notes, and you can get hold of her. Also, don't forget to visit her on Instagram, LinkedIn, and let's pay attention to when she posts her podcast episodes. This is all for today. It has been amazing having you, Lauren. I'll be looking forward to another episode in the future just to follow up what's happened with you and how everything has evolved. And if you are, thank you so much. If you are a follower, please don't forget to subscribe and leave some comments so that we know your experience today. See you next time.
Thank you so much, Carmen.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Hey guys, so honestly, I forgot last time to have Lauren say goodbye in different languages. And we're going to try something here. This is all raw, so nothing scripted. So let's see, Lauren, what would be the best way to say bye to everybody in this podcast? Or
okay,
what should we say?
I do this on my own Instagram a lot. I'll do English, Spanish, and Greek. So I'll just say goodbye to all of my friends. I hope you have a good day. In Spanish, adiós a todos mis amigos. Espero que todos tengan un lindo día. And then in Greek, yasa seorus tuselines virusmu, el piso naegete mia omorphimera. Yeah, yes.
There you have it. It's amazing. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Thank you.
Bye.